Talk to my deaf son and marry him." The laughter echoed through the illuminated hall, cutting through the clinking of cutlery, the elegant murmur, and the jazz playing in the background. The phrase, uttered between giggles and disdainful glances, landed like a slap in the face of the young waitress holding the tray. The billionaire Antonio Vasquez, the man, known for both his fortune and his arrogance, pointed to his son seated at the table, a man in a black suit, with a serene expression and a deep gaze. "He's deaf, young lady. Speak slowly, maybe he'll understand. And maybe he'll marry you too, since you like to serve." The laughter was dry, cruel. The nearby tables fell silent, and for a moment the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. The waitress took a deep breath, her eyes welling up, but she didn't back down. She lowered her head slightly, as if trying to maintain her dignity, and replied in a firm voice, "I may not have much, sir, but I don't humiliate those who listen to me with their hearts." And then the deaf man, the son, raised his eyes to her and read every word on her lips. And what he saw there would change the lives of everyone at that table. Before we delve into this amazing story, tell me which city and state you're watching from. Leave a comment and I'll reply with gratitude. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and like this video. We want to share more stories like this. It was Saturday night at the restaurant, Golden Villa, the favorite of the city's elite. Marble tables, crystal glasses, and waiters trained to smile even when the world was burning around them. Lucia, she, 27 years old, had been working there for 3 months. She was discreet, efficient, and had that look that blended strength and sweetness, the kind of look that tries to see the best in people, even when the best is hidden. She worked the night shift, serving laughter, bottles, and humiliations with the same tray. That night, the most anticipated reservation was for Antonio Vasquez, a billionaire in the investment business, a man known for turning companies into empires and people into nothing. He arrived accompanied by his son, Gabriel, a man of about 30, with calm features and an attentive gaze. He was deaf from birth and communicated through lip reading and simple gestures. Around him, 4 businessmen followed him with ready smiles and laughter that came from their mouths, not their hearts. Lucia approached the table with her notepad. "Good evening, gentlemen. Would you like something to drink to start?" Antonio didn't even raise his eyes. "Bring the best wine, the most expensive one," he said, as if giving an order to a servant. Lucia took notes, maintaining her composure. "Any preference for which harvest season?" He raised an eyebrow, already impatient. "Do you think an expensive wine needs a vintage? Just bring it." One of the businessmen laughed loudly, trying to please him. Lucia smiled slightly, taking a deep breath. When he returned with the bottle, he carefully placed it on the table. But a drop slipped from the neck and fell onto the billionaire's napkin. That was enough. Antonio looked down, then at her. The entire room seemed to be watching. "Do you hire just anyone now?" he muttered, loud enough to be heard. Lucia froze, but remained calm. "I apologize, sir. May I change the napkin?" "No, no need," he continued, his voice now a mixture of irony and disgust. "Just talk to my deaf son and marry him. Maybe he'll accept a wife who doesn't know how to serve." The laughter that followed was like a blade. The businessman squirmed, laughing out of obligation. Gabriel, however, slowly raised his gaze. He fixed his eyes on the waitress's lips and read each syllable of the answer she uttered with dignity in a low but firm voice. "It's better to be simple and respectful than to be rich and forget what it means to be human." Antonio fell silent for a moment. The laughter died in his throat and the glances at the table became tense. Lucia left, her tray pressed against her chest, her steps controlled. Outside in the service corridor, she leaned against the wall and let a tear fall. She wasn't crying out of shame. She was crying because contempt hurts more when it comes from someone who has everything and uses it to belittle others. Gabriel observed everything. He didn't hear, but he understood. And in that silence where the world insisted on calling him disabled, he saw what few saw. The way Lucia's lips trembled, the way her eyes asked not for pity, but for respect. His gaze followed her every movement until it disappeared through the side door. Meanwhile, Antonio started laughing again, trying to hide his discomfort. "Don't take it seriously, son. People like that are meant to serve us, not to be offended." Gabriel didn't answer. He just looked at his father, then at the wine, and left the glass untouched. Dinner continued, but something had changed. Lucia finished her shift in silence, avoiding meeting Gabriel's gaze again, not out of fear, but out of modesty. As she left through the back door, the early morning wind enveloped her, and she allowed herself to take a deep breath. She didn't know that same night, Gabriel would leave the restaurant without his father, returning home alone, still with her image etched in his mind. Fate, however, has a curious way of returning the words we throw to the wind, and what Antonio had said mockingly that night was about to become a prophecy. Because weeks later, when his empire began to crumble, it would be precisely that waitress who would help him see, not with his eyes, but with his soul. Time passed like a breath, and the once indestructible Vasquez empire began to silently crumble. The market changed, contracts evaporated, and Antonio's arrogance, which had once opened doors, now closed them. He refused help, ignored advice, and pushed away all who tried to warn him. The man who once laughed loudly at expensive dinners began to eat lunch alone, and the telephones that once rang incessantly became as silent as the very silence he had so despised. Gabriel, on the other hand, followed a different path. Working as an illustrator at a small publishing house, he lived discreetly and kindly. He had learned to read the world through gestures and glances, and that was precisely what led him back to her. It was an ordinary afternoon when he entered a small cafe in the city center. The place was simple, cozy, smelled of fresh bread, and had walls painted in shades of beige and gold. Behind the counter, with her hair tied back and a restrained smile, was Lucia. He recognized her immediately. The same firm posture, the same serene gaze. When she saw him, it took her a few seconds to process. The man from dinner, the millionaire's son, now in a simple shirt, backpack on his back, and a calm look. He smiled discreetly and made a slight gesture with his hand, signaling a shy hello. Lucia returned the gesture, unsure whether she should speak or not. He pointed to the menu, then to a lemon tart on the counter. She nodded and began to serve him. When she placed the plate in front of him, he took a small notepad from his pocket and wrote, "Do you still remember that night?" She read, hesitated, and replied with a borrowed pen. "It's hard to forget when someone tries to humiliate you, but I remember more those who remained silent." He smiled, and his smile was different. It wasn't pity or excuse. It was gratitude. He continued writing, "I understood what you said. I read it on your lips, and it has stayed with me ever since." Lucia took a deep breath, surprised by the sincerity. There was no shame or discomfort, only a calm truth between them. In the following days, Gabriel returned to the cafe. Always the same order, always the same greeting. Gradually, they began to communicate through notes and glances. She learned some basic signs, and he patiently taught her simple words. With each meeting, the conversation grew in silence, and without realizing it, something beautiful began to blossom, not from words, but from understanding. Meanwhile, Antonio was living through his own personal hell. His companies were in crisis, and his name had become a joke among the very men who had flattered him. His pride prevented him from even asking his own son for help. A mild heart attack landed him in a public hospital, where he remained for weeks without receiving any visitors. When he was discharged from the hospital, he decided to look for Gabriel. He arrived at his son's small apartment and upon entering was surprised by a scene that disarmed him. Gabriel and Lucia were sitting at the table, laughing while writing in a notebook. The air smelled of cornbread and fresh coffee, a simplicity that Antonio never understood. Lucia was the first to stand up, unsure whether she should greet him. "Good afternoon, Mr. Vasquez." He looked at her, and for a moment the past hit him hard. The memory of the dinner, the cruel phrase, the shame he should feel. It all came rushing back. "You work here now?" "No, sir. I only came to visit your son." Gabriel, sensing the tension, touched her arm and gestured something with his hands. Lucia translated, her voice trembling. "He said he's glad you came." Antonio looked away. Happy. He should have been disappointed. She replied calmly, "I think he just wanted you around." That phrase pierced the silence like a prayer. Antonio sat down slowly, his eyes welling up, but too proud to let them fall. Gabriel placed a sheet of paper on the table where he wrote in firm handwriting, "Dad, sometimes the person who talks the most is the one who listens the least." Antonio read, and something inside him broke. For the first time in a long time, he didn't answer. He just lowered his head. In the following days, he began to appear more often. He would stay silent, observing the two of them talking, exchanging gestures and laughter. Little by little, the wall between them began to dissolve. He started to understand simple signs, to realize that love doesn't need sound to exist. But the real reunion would come on a rainy night when Antonio received a call from a former partner. The company was about to declare bankruptcy. Desperate, he sought out Gabriel, who was at the cafe. Lucia, seeing his state, dropped everything and went to help. "I don't know what to do anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "Everything I've built is slipping away." She looked at him with the same serenity of someone who has already learned to fall and get back up. "Sometimes, Mr. Vasquez, God brings down the empire of pride to show who truly still knows how to love." He closed his eyes and for the first time did not defend himself. At that moment, the man who had once mocked her understood what it meant to be truly deaf, not in hearing, but in spirit. And there, before the waitress he had humiliated and the son he had ignored, his true healing began. The clock showed almost 9 o'clock at night when the storm began. The wind blew strongly outside, and the lights of the small cafe flickered with each clap of thunder. Antonio sat at the table, his hands trembling on his knees, breathing heavily. Gabriel typed something on his cell phone, trying to send short messages for his father to read, while Lucia prepared a cup of coffee. The atmosphere was simple, but there was something there that the man, accustomed to luxury and forced silence, had never felt before: peace. It was the first time in a long time that the sound of the rain seemed more pleasant than the sound of the false voices that had previously surrounded him. Lucia placed the coffee in front of him and spoke softly. "You need to rest, Mr. Vasquez. Tomorrow is another day." He looked at her, and his gaze was that of a man who carried shame and gratitude in equal measure. "Just call me Antonio." His voice trembled, almost a plea. She nodded. "Okay, Antonio." The silence that followed was lighter. Antonio looked at his son, who was drawing on a napkin. It was the outline of 3 intertwined hands, 2 large ones and a small one in the middle. He held up the drawing, showed it to the two of them, and smiled. Lucia looked and understood. It was his way of saying that somehow they were connected. Antonio took a deep breath, his voice choked with emotion. "You want me to apologize, don't you?" Gabriel looked at him calmly and typed on his cell phone. "I don't want to. I just want you to see what has always been there, but you've never heard of it." That phrase pierced Antonio's heart. For a moment, everything fell silent. The thunder, the rain, even his own guilt. He rested his hands on the table and spoke softly. I was a horrible man, Lucia, arrogant, blind. I thought respect was a luxury, and I humiliated you for sport. She interrupted him calmly. I forgave you that day, Antonio. Not because you deserved it, but because holding on to hatred would make me the same. He lowered his head. It was the first time someone had disarmed him without yelling. Gabriel watched everything, his eyes brimming with tears. He touched his father's arm and, with slow gestures, signaled something. Lucia translated, he said that you can start over. Antonio closed his eyes, trying to hold back tears. How? He asked, his voice choked with emotion. Just like he lives, Lucia replied, listening to what has no sound. The next day, the sun rose timidly and the coffee service returned to its routine. But for Antonio, every little gesture seemed new. The way people greeted each other, the lightness of their smiles, even the sound of the bell at the door, everything seemed to have color. He began helping Lucia in the mornings, washing cups, organizing tables. At first she protested, but then she realized that it did him good. The man who had once humiliated her now asked permission to serve. One day, while they were tidying the counter, Lucia asked, Antonio, why did your son become deaf? He paused, thoughtful. He was born this way. The doctor said it was a genetic problem, but deep down, I think it was to teach me to listen, she smiled. So he is your miracle. Yes, he replied, and you too. Time transformed the three of them. Gabriel started teaching drawing to deaf children, and Lucia became a volunteer in the same project. Antonio helped with the financial side, but more than that, he helped by serving coffee, arranging chairs, and talking to the children's parents. His empire was now different, made of gestures, empathy, and humanity. Months later, during an exhibition of children's drawings, Gabriel went up on stage and showed a special painting. It was a portrait of a woman holding a tray with a slight smile and eyes full of hope. In the corner, a phrase written in gold ink, "Silence taught me to listen to those whom the world tries to silence." The audience gave a standing ovation. Lucia, moved, looked at Antonio, who was crying uncontrollably. He approached his son and hugged him tightly, and in that hug, for the first time, he felt the sound of forgiveness. When the night ended, Lucia went to him, placing her hand on the shoulder of the man who had once humiliated her. See, Antonio, you were talking too loudly to hear what life was trying to say. He smiled, wiping away his tears. And now, Lucia? She looked at Gabriel, who was smiling from afar, and replied, Now we speak from the heart. The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with everything that had been lacking before: respect, love, and redemption. And the man who once mocked, saying, "Talk to my deaf son and marry him," now saw with gratitude that those words had become prophecy. Because destiny, with its divine irony, always finds a way to teach lessons to those who most need to hear them. In the reflection of the cafe window, the three figures, the man, the woman, and the child, appeared as one, and the illuminated street sign blinked with golden light, like a final sign from the universe saying, "Now you listen." Several months had passed since the exhibition, and the small cafe where it had all begun anew had become a meeting point. People of all kinds came to sample the simple cake, the hot coffee, and unknowingly to touch a bit of the history that resided there. Antonio, now with whiter hair and a serene expression, had left his billionaire suit behind. He traded meetings for notebooks and learned something that money never gave him: the lightness of being useful. The arrogance had dissolved, along with the false glitter of power. One Sunday morning, the sun streamed gently through the cafe windows. Gabriel was sketching intently in a corner while Lucia arranged fresh flowers on the tables. Antonio watched silently, a smile mixing pride and regret. Suddenly, Gabriel stood up and showed them a new drawing, a portrait of the three of them with a gold background and the caption, "Family is whoever listens to what you can't say." Lucia brought her hand to her mouth, overcome with emotion. Antonio, unable to hold back his tears, touched his son's shoulder and pulled him into a hug. No words were needed. The gesture said it all. "You know, Lucia," he said in a low voice, "I've spent my life telling people to listen to me. Today, I just want to learn how to listen," she smiled. "And you've been listening very well, Antonio." "Well," he laughed, wiping his eyes, "it seems Gabriel's silence is louder than anything I've ever said." In the following days, the cafe also became a small school. Lucia and Gabriel started a project called Voices of Silence, who taught sign language for free to people in the community. Antonio financed the place and took care of the accounting, but he made a point of telling everyone, "The credit goes to them. I just clean the tables." The phrase drew laughter, but those who knew him knew he was serious, and in fact it was common to see him wiping down the counter, adjusting chairs, or serving water to customers. The man who had once despised humble work now considered it sacred. One afternoon, an elegant woman entered the cafe. She was wearing high heels and expensive perfume. She surveyed the surroundings and then approached the counter. "You are Antonio Vasquez, aren't you?" He nodded, surprised. "I was your company's secretary 10 years ago. I never imagined I'd see you here." "That's right," he replied with a slight smile. "The world turns, and sometimes it turns to teach us humility." She looked around. "What happened to you, sir?" "I lost what I thought was important, and found what truly was." The woman remained silent for a few seconds and before leaving said, "I never imagined that the man who shouted orders could speak with such peace." He smiled. "It's just that now I've learned how to listen." That night, the cafe closed late. Lucia was cleaning the counter when Antonio approached, holding a small wooden box. "Lucia," he called seriously, "I wanted to give you something." She looked, curious. "What is that?" "A request," she said, opening the box and revealing a simple silver ring. "It's not to erase what I did, nor to buy forgiveness. It's just to promise that, as long as I live, I will use my voice to uplift those I once humiliated." Lucia was speechless. Gabriel, who was watching from afar, smiled and gestured with his hands. "Now you understand." Antonio laughed, wiping away a tear. "I understand, my son. I finally understand." Lucia took a deep breath and replied tenderly, "Antonio, I don't need a ring. You've already married your conscience." He smiled, putting the small box back in his pocket. So be it, a silent promise. Time passed, and life went on. The cafe prospered, the children learned sign language, and the town began to talk about the place where silence has a voice. Gabriel and Lucia grew closer and closer, with a discreet, true love, born not from what was said, but from what was felt. Antonio, already in frail health, continued to frequent the cafe every day. He sat at the same table, observed the two, and smiled. On his last birthday, Gabriel and Lucia organized a small celebration. He blew out the candles surrounded by children, employees, and friends. When they opened the gift their son had given him, they found a picture with a phrase that would summarize his entire journey. Some learn to listen when the world falls silent. Others, when love speaks louder than pride. Antonio rested his head on his son's shoulder and murmured, "I've been deaf my whole life, Gabriel." The son smiled and gestured, "But now you listen." The father nodded, closing his eyes with a peaceful smile. The imaginary camera pulls back, revealing the interior of the cafe, bathed in the golden light of dusk. Lucia pours a last cup. Gabriel draws in the corner, and on the wall hanging in the frame, a painting shows 3 silhouettes of intertwined hands. The caption below, in white letters on a gold background, reads, "Silence is not absence. It is the language of those who have learned to listen with their hearts." And as the scene dissolves, the memory of the arrogant voice that once said echoes, "Talk to my deaf son and marry him." But now, transformed by time and love, the phrase takes on another meaning, one that speaks of forgiveness, humanity, and new beginnings. And if this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone you love. Click now to share it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming stories we're preparing with great care for you.